Welcome to medieval medicine, where doctors believed the human body suffered from one major problem. It still contained far too much blood. Their solution was simple and horrifying. Remove enough blood, and the patient might somehow begin feeling healthier, or at least quieter afterward. Instead of relying only on blades and bowls, medieval physicians often preferred a living tool that attached itself directly to human skin. That tool was the leech, a small blood-sucking parasite perfectly built for slowly draining unlucky people, while everyone else called it treatment. Across Europe, doctors demanded huge numbers of leeches every year, creating a surprisingly important and deeply unpleasant profession for desperate workers. Someone had to walk into marshes and swamps, gather those parasites alive, and keep medieval medicine stocked with fresh living equipment. Those workers were leech collectors, people who harvested blood-drinking worms directly from freezing mud, stagnant water, and insect-filled wetlands every day. Unfortunately for you, today that revolting occupation is your full-time job, and your body is about to become part of the toolkit. Your workplace is not a tidy hospital, but a damp swamp packed with thick mud, buzzing insects, reeds, and dark stagnant water. The first step is brutally simple. Remove your boots, roll your clothes, and step barefoot into the cold, murky swamp water. There are no gloves, no clever devices, and no protective gear. Only exposed skin and an impressive tolerance for discomfort and regret. Your main equipment is embarrassingly basic. Bare legs, a glass jar, steady nerves, and the patience to stand completely still. Once inside the water, you remain motionless and wait for something beneath the surface to notice your warm blood above it. Sooner or later, something small and hungry will find you. Investigate carefully and decide whether your legs look worth climbing. At first, the swamp seems calm and quiet, which somehow makes the entire situation feel even more uncomfortable and strangely threatening. Beneath the surface, creatures are already sensing warmth and movement, drifting slowly through the muddy water wrapped around your legs. Leeches move patiently through the muck, gliding toward heat with the calm confidence of creatures that rarely miss a meal. If this already sounds awful, subscribe now, because medieval history somehow keeps finding ways to make terrible jobs even worse. Eventually, one reaches your ankle and touches your skin, like a quiet introduction to something unpleasant and completely unavoidable indeed today. For one brief moment, the parasite pauses, almost as if deciding whether your blood will make a satisfying meal today. Then it attaches firmly and starts drinking, slowly pulling blood through its mouth, with quiet, focused, deeply irritating determination right there. Strangely, the bite barely hurts, which sounds comforting, until you realize several more parasites may already be attaching unnoticed nearby. Soon, another leech locks on beside the first, happily joining what is quickly becoming a crowded feeding station on your legs. Then another arrives, followed by several more, turning your calves into a growing gathering of enthusiastic blood-drinking parasites within minutes. Within moments, your legs host a collection of worms, quietly feeding without the slightest concern for your comfort, dignity, or survival. From a distance, the scene almost looks decorative, like dark ribbons, slowly wrapping themselves around your ankles in motion today. Each parasite keeps drinking, while gradually swelling into a thicker, darker shape, filled with blood, taken directly from your body. Your job now requires perfect stillness, because sudden movement will scare them away before they finish feeding completely today. So you remain frozen in swamp water, while parasites continue expanding across your legs in steadily growing numbers now. Some stay near your ankles, while others crawl upward along your calves, searching for fresh exposed places to attach there. A few ambitious leeches even settle behind your knees, where removing them later becomes especially awkward and unpleasant for everyone. As they feed, each parasite slowly grows larger, transforming from thin worms into swollen shapes heavy with stolen blood today. Your blood gradually fills their bodies, turning each small creature into a dark, living container of your own circulation there. Watching them swell is deeply disturbing, because every single one is visibly fattening itself on blood taken from you directly. Eventually, the leeches become completely full and release their grip, dropping lazily back into the muddy swamp water below again. Fat parasites fall into the shallows, signaling the beginning of the second half of your uncomfortable, exhausting workday now. Now you crouch carefully, searching the water surface and soft mud for swollen leeches drifting nearby after feeding there. Be honest. Would you take this job for enough money? or quit immediately and sprint home? Tell me below. Each parasite is lifted from the water and placed gently into a glass jar, carried for this exact purpose there. The jar slowly fills with wriggling creatures, valuable supplies for doctors who depend heavily on these parasites every day. Healthy leeches are surprisingly valuable resources, even if collecting them requires standing in swamp water and feeding them yourself. After several exhausting hours, your jars finally contain enough parasites to justify leaving the swamp and heading toward town. You climb out of the mud covered in grime, insect bites, and dozens of small wounds still bleeding steadily there. Each step away from the swamp feels heavier as blood loss and fatigue begin catching up with your exhausted body. The walk back to town is long, and every movement reminds you your legs are still actively bleeding beneath clothing. Villagers immediately notice your arrival, especially the jars filled with thick, wriggling worms swinging beside your legs there too. People understand doctors need leeches, but they still prefer keeping a very safe distance from those who collect them. Your reputation becomes something unusual, part necessary worker and part unsettling figure associated with swamps, blood, and parasites nearby. Even curious children stare nervously, watching dark shapes twist and press against the inside of your glass jars tonight. Meanwhile, the bite marks on your legs keep dripping blood because leeches release chemicals that prevent proper clotting there. This means even hours later, your wounds remain open, slowly leaking as you walk through the streets of town. After a full working day, your legs contain dozens of cuts, each one contributing to steady blood loss overall. Unfortunately, swamp water is rarely clean, and open wounds provide the perfect doorway for harmful bacteria to enter inside. Infections are extremely common, especially for workers who spend long hours standing in stagnant, contaminated, parasite-filled water there together. Many collectors eventually develop fevers after repeated exposure to bacteria, cold water, and constant physical exhaustion from work. Others grow noticeably weaker over time as their bodies struggle against continuous blood loss and daily physical strain. Standing motionless for hours also drains strength, more than most people expect from simply standing still in water. Some collectors eventually collapse from exhaustion while still standing inside the swamp during a normal workday there. Falling face first into parasite-filled water is exactly as horrifying, filthy, and miserable as it sounds in reality. Even when everything goes well, the job remains deeply unpleasant and physically demanding far beyond normal human expectations. Because every successful day still requires offering your own blood as bait for hungry parasites living in the swamp. Yet despite the misery, society continues depending on leech collectors to support medieval medical practice across entire regions. Doctors believe these parasites cure headaches, fevers, swelling, inflammation, and many other mysterious, badly understood medical conditions still. Patients expected bleeding to help almost everything, which meant demand for fresh, healthy leeches rarely disappeared from the marketplace. Hospitals and apothecaries require constant supply, meaning fresh leeches must be collected again and again without interruption. That forces collectors to return daily, stepping once more into the same cold, muddy, parasite-filled water there again. Usually this happens every morning, regardless of weather, health, or how terrible the previous working day felt. Without these workers, doctors would quickly lose access to one of their most trusted and frequently used treatments. So tomorrow, you will return again, walking back into the swamp with empty jars and tired, aching legs. You will remove your boots once more and step barefoot into water filled with waiting parasites below there. And once again, you will stand still, allowing creatures to attach themselves and slowly drink your blood today. Because in medieval society, this was considered a completely normal and necessary part of healthcare systems everywhere. Despite how terrible it sounds, this profession remained essential for keeping doctors supplied with living medical tools. Every successful collector was part laborer, part bait, and part reusable delivery system for swamp-bred parasites there. Your body was the lure, your blood was the payment, and your reward was carrying worms home in jars. And somehow this still is not the worst job in history. Wait until you see the next one. So, the cycle continues, day after day, swamp after swamp, feeding parasites with your own blood almost endlessly, because medieval history is filled with terrible jobs, and this one is only the beginning of that long list.